ExpressRoute service, you have two SKU types, ER Standard and ExpressRoute Premium. So ExpressRoute Standard is will get you connected to the region in Melbourne and Sydney. But suppose you wanted to connect to a region in US or Europe or Canberra, AU Central. So for that you would need ExpressRoute Premium. So just level setting there. And again, some of you may have seen this diagram many times, but this is what an ExpressRoute service looks like. So I'll go down into a bit more detail what happens in the data center. This ExpressRoute service comes with an SLA, and the whole reason we give an SLA is because it is not just one link that you're getting between the partner edge and the Microsoft edge. You're actually getting redundant links in the middle, and both are configured in an active-active fashion. Some of our competitors may just give you one handoff and it doesn't come with an SLA, but this actually is built in. So if you were to look at it, suppose you were getting a 1 gig ExpressRoute service. Because we'll provision the service over the primary link as well as the secondary link, you're actually in the back end getting 2 by 1 gig ExpressRoute service, but you're only paying for 1 gig. What that means is that from our perspective, both of those links are active-active, and we'll be sending traffic over both those links depending on TCP flow. But say from your customer network you wanted to prefer one link over the other, then you can use something like local preference to maybe prefer to send traffic over one of the links if you want to. But we recommend customers for the SLA is to keep both links active. So if any time anything happens to the primary link, your secondary connection should be able to keep running. And of course, then I'll now mention the different peering points you have within Azure. So for customers who are currently doing site-to-site VPN, they only are getting access to the IaaS instance of our offering, which is this is depicted through private peering. So private peering is all connectivity of your extending your virtual data center to the cloud. It is your private connectivity to Azure. But Microsoft peering gives you a lot more services such as SQL, storage, SCP on Azure that all sits on public IP endpoints, and they're part of Microsoft peering. Now, a lot of question at this point, I get asked a lot of question about Office 365. So Office 365, our stand is it is not recommended to run over ExpressRoute. Unless the customer goes through a network assessment and actually shows us that the internal network is that bad that they can't run voice over it, or they have got compliance for compliance reasons. So it is not very easy to get approval to run Office 365 over ExpressRoute. Also, customers who probably ventured on a couple of years ago, this was open. Customers who did venture on and try to enable this, they actually got asymmetric routing. It was really messy. So our stand is it's a SaaS service, works perfectly over the public internet. So the next slide, I'm going to talk about the value proposition of ExpressRoute. Where does it make sense? So if you were coming to me and say, should I get optimum connectivity to SharePoint? Should I get an ExpressRoute service? And my response to that would be no. You probably don't need an ExpressRoute service. Your internet would just work fine. ExpressRoute service gives you that predictable performance, and like I mentioned, sometimes when you are doing a site-to-site VPN and using your internet to connect to your instance on Azure, you are using the same branch of this internet to get connectivity to Azure, where your apps may reside. And if someone is doing a large file transfer, and also depending on the time of the day, how congested the link is, the performance may not be the same all the time. So when you want predictable performance, business-grade continuity, then ExpressRoute makes sense. And same applies to high throughput link. Internet does not give you an SLA. ExpressRoute, because of the high availability design with the primary link and the secondary link, actually gives you the SLA. Talking about high throughput, the minimum ExpressRoute circuit, dedicated circuit you can bring up is 50 megabits per second, but it can scale up to 10 gigabits per second. So there's a lot of scale for customers as well. And we already touched on redundancy, the way that it's designed with the primary and the secondary link. Redundancy actually is built in with this service. And also some of the industry, the regulations actually mandates that they use a private connection to the cloud, and ExpressRoute is your private connection to the cloud. Just talking about some of the use cases for ExpressRoute. So the most common one I see customers starting off with is storage backup and recovery. And the whole reason they use ExpressRoute as a part to Azure is because, again, the privacy provides the reliability and the high throughput from the on-prem data center to the cloud. So it becomes a seamless transaction. SAP requires a lot of bandwidth, and because ExpressRoute can really scale, when you have got SAP workload on Azure, using ExpressRoute makes sense. Same with virtual data center. So in that case, you're extending your data center to the cloud, and now you're using the scale of the cloud to put more workloads in, and having that seamless transaction between your on-prem network and into Azure makes sense to use ExpressRoute. And same with hybrid app, big data, and dev test. And these are just some of the examples, but there's a lot more that, depending on what your workloads you're putting on Azure, it will make sense to use an ExpressRoute service. Some of the sections, next section I'm going to talk about the DR design, and I'll try to just talk over what I'm seeing with customers. Customers already have a site-to-site VPN connecting to a instance, or connecting to the IS instance of my Azure, and they're talking about introducing an ExpressRoute service. So when they do get an ExpressRoute service out of Auckland, and they are running a site-to-site VPN, suppose something happens to that ExpressRoute service out of Auckland, it will by default, if they've got site-to-site VPN configured and ExpressRoute configured, by default the failover should happen. It will automatically route to the site-to-site VPN for connectivity. Some of the other design considerations we're speaking with customers is getting two ExpressRoute services. So this example actually shows West US and East US, but think about it as your ExpressRoute out of Auckland. You map it to, say, Sydney data center and Sydney region, and then your ExpressRoute out of long haul out of Sydney, map it to your Melbourne data center. Probably, I got that wrong. Your long haul to Sydney, map it to your Sydney region. Your express out of Auckland, map it to your Melbourne region. So now in that case, you got two ExpressRoute service. You could make your the one connecting to Auckland maybe a higher bandwidth, and I'm just going to throw a number, maybe a 1 gig circuit. But the bandwidth, the long haul out of Sydney, can just be a 50 meg service, because you'll always use it as a backup in case something happens to your primary link. So what you've done there now is you've actually designed your network to be highly resilient, not from a ExpressRoute connectivity perspective, from whether you're using the Microsoft backbone or using a carrier backbone, but you also, with the two regions in Australia, you've actually got a real redundant solution. So the next few slides, I'm going to talk about some of the ways customers can easily use BGP to maintain that quick failover between the regions in case there's an outage. I know I'm going maybe a bit fast, but I will ask, I'll have time for questions later on, if that's okay. And no one's asked questions, but I'm sure you've got a lot of questions. So in this case, in this example, you've got an ExpressRoute gateway that is connected to two ExpressRoute circuits. Now, from the on-prem network, you're actually advertising the ranges to Azure, but you're probably preferring, in this case, the LA routes via the LA ExpressRoute service. But because the LA branch office is connected to the New York branch office via the MPLS network, it's also learning the routes from the New York office. But you're advertising it into Azure using AS path prepending and by giving it a higher metric. So in the event, what happens is Microsoft is going to see those routes, one with a shorter AS path and one with another hop to it. So what that means is that now we've got backup path in case something happens to the primary. You could also use local preference, so you could prefer LA to send traffic out for the LA ranges locally with higher local preference, and the Sydney routes could be having a lower. The New York routes could be a lower preference. So that actually prepares you in the event that there is an outage. So if the ExpressRoute circuit fails, those routes that you were learning now from LA would disappear. But because you've got AS path prepending in place, those backup routes are there in the routing table. It will route the traffic through New York coming back into your network. And that's what I'm talking about. It really depends when I talk to a customer on when they're considering the design requirements from Auckland, how do I connect to Sydney and where do I build resiliency? I normally ask them, do you want to make it a, bronze, silver, or gold-plated solution? It's really up to you. But the options are there for you, though. Those were from the customer side. Now, what do we do from a Microsoft side? Now, as you know, an ExpressRoute service can connect to multiple VNets, And once those virtual networks are connected to an ExpressRoute service, they're able to talk to each other. But in the case where you've got ExpressRoute in Sydney, ExpressRoute in Melbourne, connecting to VNets in both regions in a crisscross manner, it doesn't have the smart. The VNet does not have a smart to know which ExpressRoute is local and which is not. So you need to build the smarts in it. And that's what in the portal, you get the option to use wait feature. So what wait does is actually in this example, out of US West, it knows these are the connections to the local ExpressRoute circuit, and as a result, it's been given a higher weight. So that means in case there's an outage, it will know that if there's no outage, I'll know to get out, use this ExpressRoute circuit. In case there's a failure, I'm going to use the secondary part out. So just these were some of the networking concepts I wanted to cover as you are thinking about designing a high resilient network with the ExpressRoute service. So next topic I'm going to move on is on some of the ExpressRoute features. So as you would be talking to our ExpressRoute partners on how they offer the service, and I'm just going to build up the slide. They would be offering the service in a layer 2 model, colo model, or a layer 3 model. And the colo model and the Ethernet model or layer 2 model are the same, because what that means is that from an ExpressRoute perspective, the provider or the ExpressRoute partner is going to give you physical handoff, either at the data center or at a remote location for you to connect to the ExpressRoute service. A layer 3 partner, however, may be giving, you already have an MPLS network, and the layer 3 provider is going to advertise those ranges from your virtual network and your public peering ranges, if you bring up your Microsoft peering, into the routing table. So the customer is more hands-off. If you go with a layer 2 ExpressRoute provider, you need to be looking after the BGP and the routing and the termination of your peering. Or maybe in some cases, maybe the partner is bundling it for you, but I'm not sure what the offering is currently. But when you're having that conversation with your ExpressRoute partner, please ask those questions. So with the, like I mentioned, with the any-to-any or IP layer 3 solution, the routes would magically appear into your MPLS network. So for a remote branch, trying to route to Azure, it really wouldn't be able to differentiate whether the routes are coming from an ExpressRoute service or is it coming from another branch office. The other methodology we've introduced is called ExpressRoute Direct. So I'll jump to next slide. You want to take a photo?
Thank you. Is that
So ExpressRoute Direct actually is a connectivity method without an ExpressRoute partner in the middle. And the whole reason is ExpressRoute only goes up to 10 gigabits per second. But we've got those niche market where customers actually need a much higher throughput connecting to Microsoft Edge and services on Azure. So for those customers, we can actually peer directly with the customer in Auckland on 100 gig ports. So it is not for everybody. It is a single tenant. It is for a customer use, not for a reseller use. So in that case, the minimum virtual circuit you can order is 5 gigabits per second. So it is not for everybody, but it is those customers who actually require high throughput. Especially the use cases, we actually had a hospital in US who wanted to send a lot of data into Azure, and they needed to be close to the edge because they were doing genomics on HPC. So as a result, what that meant is that this service actually provided them that high capacity, high throughput private link directly to Azure. And this slide actually discusses the difference between a ExpressRoute service and a direct service. So like I mentioned, you're limited with your bandwidth with a normal ExpressRoute service, but with the direct service, you can go up to 100 gigabits per second. And it's optimized for single tenant, and also ExpressRoute Direct is for single tenant as well. And especially also those large organizations which have got multiple branch offices, and each branch or each division needed an ExpressRoute service, which is not, you don't see that often, but that option is there. So the other product I'll talk on is global reach. And again, if you think back, the first slide I put on was about our Microsoft backbone and how large it is and how it's scaling. So the next few products we have launched is actually all of these products will be using our Microsoft backbone to reach customers and offer services to customers. So So the theme that you're seeing is network as a service offering from how network as a service offering from Microsoft to end users. So the first one is global reach. Now global reach actually, as you know, an ExpressRoute service lets you connect to Azure, but there was always a ask from customers that I'm never able to route from my branch office to branch office using the Microsoft backbone. And customers actually were creative and they did so using, they put some Cisco CSR routers, they did IPsec tunnel. This is not something that was supported by us, but they got into complex routing to get that going. So we've made it very easy for customers. Customers can now use the Microsoft backbone and have two branch offices routing to each other using the Microsoft backbone. So what we do tell customers, it actually complements your existing WAN solution. So it is not a replacement of your WAN solution, but it's supposed to work hand in hand with your existing WAN solution. And some of the use cases for that is, let's say the company you work for has acquired another company somewhere else in the world, and they have an ExpressRoute service, but you haven't really worked out your network merger. And I've been through network mergers, it does not happen in 6 months, it takes much longer. So while you're sorting that out, you could have this, because the other company that you've acquired has an ExpressRoute circuit, you can connect them on the Microsoft backbone, extend the private peering, and now you're able to route branch to branch while you're still working out how to get this going. The other use case is, let's say you're starting up in a new country and you don't have the relationship with the telco there yet, but you can easily get an ExpressRoute service and you want to use Microsoft backbone to route to the branch side. So this is quite possible. So it is an on-demand connectivity model. So it is pay as you go. So you're not in any long-term contract, and traffic stays on the Microsoft global network. So it is not going over the internet, and it is something that is available out of for Auckland customers as well, of New Zealand customers as well. So it is available on all our public clouds, this particular product. So it is an add-on when you do bring up ExpressRoute, and if you are thinking about global reach, you do need ExpressRoute Premium, because if you're going to another region anywhere else in the world, you do need Premium, ExpressRoute Premium for the routing. So that's the prerequisite. The other network as a service offering is Virtual WAN. And the whole reason Virtual WAN has come about is you must be experiencing this network transformation in your own company, where now a central data center that you had is not of much relevance, because now some of the apps have gone to the cloud, some of the apps are still in-house, but you can see the trend. Your users are not sitting in a central office. Now you've got mobile users, you've got people flexibility to work from home. So you've got users now spread, but they need to connect to these apps on Azure. So for a remote branch office trying to connect to an app on Azure, the path they'll follow is probably from a remote branch. They'll follow the default route, come to the central data center, and from there find the path back out to wherever this app resides. But what if we can give you that connectivity, more optimized connectivity directly from the remote branch office? And that's where Virtual WAN plays a big part. So Virtual WAN is a product that was released about 8-9 months ago. It is still an evolving product, and we're releasing a lot more capability into this, but it is highly scalable. So Virtual WAN actually gives you that branch-to-branch connectivity with different endpoints or termination types. You can have a branch coming in via our partner SD-WAN device, and I'll go through who are our SD-WAN partners. You can have a old-school firewall from a branch office doing a site-to-site VPN back into the Virtual WAN hub. And you could also use spoke VNets that are connected on Azure. That can be part of the virtual hub, and now they're all routing and talking to each other. So if you look back at my example, the remote user at the branch office now has a much more optimized, efficient way to connect to the app on Azure instead of relying on the head office data center. So some of the features of the Virtual WAN is that Virtual WAN, we've got concept in Azure, we've got concept of regions. In Virtual WAN, we've got concept of virtual hubs. So in any particular region, you can only have one hub. So if I'll just bring up Melbourne, Sydney as an example. So you could have a hub in Melbourne, a hub in Sydney. And you can have all these different connections, endpoints connecting to it. You can have 1,000 endpoints per hub connected. Your aggregate throughput on that Virtual WAN hub goes up to 20 gigabits per second. So it is very scalable. You start off with 500, but you can really scale to 20 gigabits per second if you want to. And you can have that branch to multi-hub connectivity. So a branch office can connect to multiple hubs. So a branch office, say from Melbourne, will be able to talk to the local branch, local virtual hub, but also the virtual hub in Sydney. And also, if you are running a virtual appliance which is doing all your monitoring in Azure, you can also put some UDRs or static routes on that virtual hub and dictate that all the traffic entering that virtual hub should now go to this virtual appliance, get checked before it goes to its destination. So that's quite possible as well. You can also disable branch-to-branch connectivity. So if you don't want one branch talking to another, you can do so as well, stop that communication too. What this slide shows is now we have got public preview of ExpressRoute connecting into the Virtual WAN hub, and also a point-to-site VPN, like someone from a laptop, say, connecting to the Azure Virtual WAN as well. So that capability is should be GA in the coming months. Now I touched on the SD-WAN partners, and the whole reason why we are working with SD-WAN partners is because it's taken us a long time, a few months, to get these partners onboarded onto our platform, and the whole reason is because we want it to be a very easy, seamless configuration or provisioning for you. We've done API integration with these vendors. So what that means is that when you have for example, I'm just going to pick Citrix. If you've got a Citrix SD-WAN device configured in your remote branch office via a single management plane, you should be easily able to configure that particular hardware to talk into your virtual WAN directly. It will ask for your Azure subscription and a few more info credentials to ensure that you are, just authorization check, and then your provision. And especially when we're looking for bulk branch site provisioning, these vendors actually, because they're onboarded, they will make provisioning very easy for you. You can do 200-300 bulk site uploads. There's a lot of demos online if you look up any of these providers that actually show you how you can do so automated provisioning. So from a customer perspective, customers still can use, and people ask me that Meraki is missing there, Viptela is missing from that list. There's still nothing stopping them from doing the same thing, but it's just more of a manual configuration. Having this partner listed actually made it a more auto provisioning for the customer. And this slide actually goes over why it is good for a customer to come, to be onboarded using an SD-WAN provider instead of doing the IPsec. Because if you've done IPsec configurations, it is very error prone. It can be hard for some customers who are not familiar with the whole provisioning process. So the vendors actually make it very easy. The next slide actually discusses a customer who's looking at deploying this globally and how they can have multiple virtual hubs in multiple regions, and now this whole network is running on Azure. So you got your VNets in different regions connecting to the local virtual hub, and also your branch connecting to the virtual hub as well. And this also adds the capability of virtual hub to virtual hub connectivity using the Microsoft backbone. That's not there yet. That's why a branch office needs to connect to multiple hubs. But once it's there, this becomes very powerful play for customers. So the other thing we're going to talk about is, and that's one of the last topics for the day, is some of the application delivery solution on Azure. So you mentioned App Gateway was mentioned earlier on, but you got a couple of HTTP level application delivery mechanisms, but non-HTTP application delivery mechanism as well. And the way it's segmented is some are really good for internal, regional, and there's actually a new product that's been launched for global application delivery, and that's Front Door. It actually provides you, it's actually put here next to Traffic Manager, but it actually provides you much better failover than a quicker failover than Traffic Manager. So Front Door is your web application acceleration platform with global load balancing capability on Azure. So even though this is a new product to the market, it's something that Microsoft, we ourselves have been running, and actually you have been using these services because our own Xbox, Cortana, Bing, etc. has been running on Front Door for the last 5 years. So all our very high web workloads have been running on Azure. So it really gives, for a customer, it really gives a lot of performance boost. And the whole reason, the good use case for this is, say your application is on the cloud and your users are spread globally. but the application, say, resides out of Sydney. And the users coming out of US are having that very poor performance just because they have to do the SSL handshake, over the long path. So what Front Door does is that when you do create a Front Door instance, it actually gives it a public IP address, and that instance is then replicated to all the Microsoft Azures globally. So what that means now, and because we use Anycast protocol, the same IP address is advertised globally. So what happens now is that for the customer, when they're doing the SSL handshake, they don't need to know wherever this application resides. They're doing the SSL handshake locally to the Front Door Edge, which makes it a much better user performance experience, but also while maintaining that hot connection to the backend pool. Now the backend pool could be on could be on Azure, could be in a web app, could be a storage account, could even be sitting on another cloud, just because we're routing on a public IP level. So it is quite powerful when you think about what this means for customers. So I'll pause there, and that was my last slide, but I'm happy to hear some comments or questions.
How different AP is from CDN, Azure CDN?
Yeah, so if you think about CDN is for static delivery content, Front Door is mostly for dynamic. It does have some CDN capability, but it's not that feature rich.
Can it be in the future that ExpressRoute will be a norm versus, or will it always be a premium service? Because at the end of the day, you've got so much self-configuration and flexibility with it. It'll be like, well, I've got to have it.
Yeah.
Versus, if I only stick with, 1 gigabyte versus, because you can go up to, I think it was 100 gig, I think.
100 gig on an ExpressRoute Direct. So it really depends on, when you bring up it really depends on the customer's workload and their experience with network configuration, because ExpressRoute needs for you to know a bit of BGP and maintain that routing capability. But once you set it up, it works. So depending on what's familiar to the customer, and especially when you're talking about security, private connectivity to the cloud, then ExpressRoute makes sense. But I think at the end of the day, it'd be the user's decision.
Because I envisage that this will be bright and shiny, give it 2 years, it'll be part of everything else, and therefore there'll be another something, ExpressRoute Mark III, will come out and it'll be, 1,000 terabyte speed or something.
Quite possible.
I think the one of the reasons why a lot of people weren't picking ExpressRoute to Sydney because of the data costs, right?
Yeah.
So
and also the latency as well.
Yeah.
It's still there. It's still 5, 45, 50 or so.
With the latency play, you will see certain improvement. I don't think you'll see a very big improvement, just because it's still law of physics. You're still going to a region, but you will enter the Microsoft backbone locally, so that should give you some benefit and some some reduction.
So we'll be looking at local latency. Like at the moment, I'm on 17 or so, versus if I go to Australia, it's 45, 50.
It would really depend, because wherever your region is and where your workloads are, because it's still routing to something. Yeah.
I like to think of probably simplifying it too much, but I like to think of ExpressRoute as the difference between driving down Auckland motorway and driving down on the private highway to Puhoi.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Less contingency, better performance, and getting there faster as a result of it.
And no sheep crossing the road.
Yep.
Divya, do you see this being used for Azure DevOps?
Actually, customers do use it for Azure DevOps, because when you bring up Microsoft peering, you have a couple of route filters, and each like Azure Storage and SQL in a region has been given a BGP community community number, and Azure DevOps has also been given a BGP community number, so people can choose to allow just Azure DevOps traffic.
Right, so it's not in the same bucket as Office 365.
Yes.
Is it actually a recommended
One of the, yes.
Down the back, there's a couple of questions.
With regards to Canberra, do you need to enable ExpressRoute Premium to get into that region?
Yes, and the whole reason is Melbourne is paired with Sydney and it's zone 2. So for Auckland customers, I shouldn't say Auckland, New Zealand customers connecting to Azure, ER Standard is going to just take them to Melbourne, Sydney, but ER Premium, because Canberra is in Zone 1, even Australian customers need ER Premium to get there. You had a question?
Dan?
When are you going to turn it on?
Yes, so I'm hoping end of this month. Because currently what's happening is we are provisioning, doing internal provisioning, and then once that happens, we will give our partners, the ExpressRoute partners, a letter of authority to run cross-connects in the Vocus data center. So once they do that, I mean, of course, it wouldn't go live then. We'll have to actually again do layer 1, layer 2 light test and throughput test between Microsoft and the partner to make sure the link's good. And then they should be ready to start onboarding. But you can start talking to your partners now. Yes?
Is there any migration guidance for customers already using ExpressRoute?
Yes, definitely. So for customers, I'm in talks with a lot of customers who already have an ExpressRoute service, and that's why I brought up the slide for the ExpressRoute scenario. But you know, you can engage our local team. We've got the fast track team that also can help you as well. So there's a number of ways that you can meet Microsoft correct representatives, and they can help you with the design. And there was a question, yes.
Will you be able to scale up and down your bandwidth?
Yes, with ExpressRoute, you can scale up from 50 meg to 10 gigabits per second. So scaling out is not an issue, but when you downgrade your speed, you'll have to delete your circuit and recreate it.
Oh.
Yes.
Can you automate that?
There are some partners that can do that.
Yes.
You're going to tell us which ones?
So is your backbone network through the diverse Southern Cross and vGA networks?
Yes, that's the only path out of New Zealand, so yes.
Hawaii, you have to go back up to almost Fiji or Hawaii and then back down again, so it was probably wise we chose the other one.
Yes.
I can see a lot of existing customers want to migrate to the service. So is there a path for them?
Like a migration path?
Yes.
So if they already have an ExpressRoute, if they already have a site-to-site VPN, I'm guessing, or do they have nothing?
They've got ExpressRoute at the moment.
Oh, they've got ExpressRoute and they're looking at migrating to this. Yes,
They'll be saving money.
they definitely would be saving money, and they can start having that conversation with their with the local ExpressRoute providers now to just find out, how can I get the cross connect, or how will you inject those route into my MPLS network. So the migration path definitely is there for customers. Again, the question would arise: do you want to keep your existing long haul link, maybe reduce the bandwidth just for a DR perspective, or do you want to delete it or cancel it completely? It's really up to you and how you want to build a DR within the solution.
How do you become a partner?
So with as an ExpressRoute partner, so this is something that the strategy is run out of Corp, and my counterpart, who's a solution sales specialist, looks after partner engagement. So usually it's it's a strategy that we're looking at, how the partners are doing and how many customers they're bringing in.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Just before that one, just to explain that, is that there are 5 partners, and someone online asked a question: is Megaport one of them? Yes, they are. Parish down with that. Is that we have those 5 partners that can provide that service, but then you can have partners like, say, Intergen, Provoke, Umbrella, Datacom, etc., who then partner with those partners to connect it. So those partners don't have to be a partner to be able to deliver ExpressRoute. They're providing that as a service, as a managed service to the customer. So you've got customer, managed service provider, ExpressRoute partner. Okay. Or if you're wanting something like Azure Direct, which is where you put your own infrastructure into the Vocus data center and plug into ours, that's where you talk to Vocus as a customer. So say like a big customer, like say, like a Fonterra, they want to put their infrastructure right dead set into the Vocus data center, plug into our network straight away. That's ExpressRoute Direct. So they would just talk to Vocus directly.
Yeah, Patty made a good point, and thanks for adding that. Yes, you can use the partners, but also other partners can actually leverage these 5 ExpressRoute partners and provide that service to you.
Yep. That's the idea, is that
basically white labeling the service.
Yeah.
So those partners will have an ENNI with connectivity?
I'm not familiar with the term EN.
Or network integration, so...
Yes, they would.
they would be talking directly to those 5 partners. So like talked to the Megaport team before, is that they're talking to Intergen, etc., enter the name of partner here, and then they work with them to provide and connect that service. As a managed service, it's probably just the billing piece of the ExpressRoute from Azure, because customers won't be buying it directly from us. Obviously, it's through the portal, but then who's billing it? Is there a managed service provider? And then the Megaport team will obviously provide all the other charges as well.
So is it going to be a self-provisioning through a portal like you do with at the moment in Sydney?
It should be cut and paste exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same kind of capability.
I had a question about Front Door. So does it work along with, like, just with the app services, or can you use it with VMs as well?
My understanding is Front Door is the HTTPS termination, and it does work with app service. Your particular question on the VN we can touch on later and see if I can understand what your scenario is. Yeah.
Yeah. Dan's from the fast track team, so we'll believe him in engineering. Cool.
So can I do some quiz questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some giveaways there. So it's just, we've got some t-shirts on, but unfortunately they're all small. So I think we've got how many we got?
We've also got more pizza out there too, I think.
Yeah. So you can have pizza if you can answer the questions. You get pizza or a t-shirt, whichever one you prefer. Don't wear the pizza.
Okay, so my first question is, and would you be the judge to say who was the first person who gave the right answer?
You can be the judge.
Oh, pressure's on. Okay, go on.
So keep an eye on the audience. How many ExpressRoute partners, direct partners, have we onboarded?
Oh, I'm sure someone already here to stand up. How many?
5.
5? There you go.
And the other question is, how many Azure regions do we currently have?
54.
I'll give it to David. Just a moment in front. Oh.
Well, it's a
small one.
Yeah, you're not going to fit it.
You're a small one.
Okay, I'm thinking of a more challenging question. Anybody else with any other question? Okay, ExpressRoute standard, which regions in Australia will get you connected?
Okay, I'll give it to you. Here you go.
With ER Premium. Yeah. You can ask questions on yours.
I don't know what I'm
Build.
Save them for next time.
Nick, Dan, where's Nick?
He's Dan. Name 3 big announcements about Azure from Build. And don't ask me for the answers.
Virtual desktop, and we have
Oh, yeah.
Linux with Azure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Windows desktop.
Kubernetes. Well, this
Is that a team effort? You can timeshare the t-shirt if you
there's
want.
Two t-shirts. VM migration? Live VM migration?
He answered 2 of them.
You
You only asked for 3.
3 combined, 3 total. You're going to give me 2 more.
Azure DevSpace.
Application
Azure Spaces,
delivery.
yeah, that's
AFD.
that's 2. You got a third one?
And Windows Remote Desktop service, something like that.
What's wrong with that? It was there.
AFD was launched on 1st of
It's serverless. That's
Serverless managed for
Serverless
Kubernetes.
Kubernetes.
okay, go on And I think we'll go one more.
So maybe just got
Yeah, we did a lot of effort. Yeah, second row.
Oh, go on then. Yeah.
Well done.
Give me a beer later.
So, any other questions for Divya?
So all of the partners are there in Auckland?
Yes, my understanding is. Though they would have offices, I'm sure. other
That is
cities.
centered in Auckland.
So it is, yes. Yes.
So the pipe actually ends in Auckland?
Our Microsoft Enterprise Edge routers are in Auckland.
Is it in Auckland?
So from the South Island they come to...
It's under this
They
desk
would,
date.
yeah, sorry, from South Island they'll have to get,
The normal
some
connection.
carrier connection to come to Auckland. at the Vocus data center to get connectivity.
There are a few backbones in New Zealand though that go South Island, Christchurch, and even
Another scenario could be like we talked about indirect partnership, because in those indirect partners, because the data center is in South Island, and they could have a long haul running, between the Vocus data center in Auckland to their data center in South Island. And for a customer, they don't maybe have to get all the way to Auckland. Maybe they can leverage the data center in South Island. So there's many ways to do it. I mean, I'm sure telco people will be very creative in getting this out to the market.
And what's expected costs?
Cost?
Over, for example, is it done by amount of data, size of the pipe?
So it.
That's why it's going to be like on average 10,000.
So there's 3 cost components. So I can't really answer that question directly. So first one would be
Bandwidth, route table, and route rules, and there is not one more.
So talking about ExpressRoute?
Yeah.
ExpressRoute would be, first thing would be your carrier that you engage to connect all the way to the data center, Vocus data center. That would be one cost. Second cost would be any of these partners or ExpressRoute Direct partners. Whenever they'll bundle the service with your Ethernet service or MPLS service, there'll be some cost to that. Then the third cost would be the actual ExpressRoute cost, which is available on our website. It is the same for any customer. So those are the 3 cost components. Some of the numbers I've seen is that some customers are getting up to 50% reduction in savings for getting something locally.
And when we replace this with Azure Front Door Service, then how it will be distributed?
So Azure Front Door runs independently of the ExpressRoute service. So it's a different story altogether.
Will it be available in Auckland?
Sorry?
Front Door?
Front Door is available from the Auckland Edge as we speak. So once this Edge goes live, Front Door will go GA with it.
And as a speaker, thank you for presenting not only to us, but also thank you for giving us ExpressRoute today.
Oh, thank you. It's a whole team effort. I think I've come to the party, but it's a whole team effort, and there's teams in US, engineering team that are still working to get this going. So I'll pass on your wishes to them.
You did all the talk.
Thank you, Divya.
Thank you.
Get
Thank you.
around.
It's been lovely. Thank you.
So there's pizza, and if Divya, if you're going to be around, you can.
Yeah, I'll definitely love to chat. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All this. Oh, I want one. Same. Can't have what you hold.